Okay, perfect. Everybody is in. So we'll begin today's live stream. Firstly, I hope you had a wonderful Christmas period. I hope you had time with your families. You didn't go crazy eating too much and all that sort of stuff. But we've got a weird one that came out. Let's go straight to the shared screen here. This was a really strange one that came out then. And this was on Christmas Eve. It was Face the Nation, full broadcast. So I don't know how many of you actually watched this. I watched none of it until I started seeing all this crazy stuff coming out about, you know, this lady here and some of the others. Now, everyone's been talking about what she said, but I want to focus on what everybody said on this event and some of the forecasts and things like that that people have been saying for 2024. There's some pretty weird and crazy stuff that came out of this. So without any further ado, we're going to jump straight into it. I'm going to start at 5:15 here. Here we go.
Law enforcement sources as well. What's the degree of concern about what happens as this plays out in the coming year?
Already, law enforcement across the country is dealing with an uptick in domestic terrorism cases because there is this concern about how will the public react if there is a conviction in any of these cases. And already.
Okay, so the first thing we got to talk about is this gentleman, and he's talking about domestic terrorism cases. And he's actually saying that, which surprised me, that there are now as many investigations for domestic terrorism in the US as there are for overseas terrorism cases. And at first when I heard that, I thought, no, that can't be right. The US is dealing with, I mean, the increase was so staggering, the number. I should have written it down actually. The increase was like multiples of X up on these cases now of domestic terrorism in the US. And there was a lot of people talking about it, and why is this, you know, why are they, I mean, it's pretty obvious to me, and they talk about it later on in this interview, talk show, whatever you want to call it, where they talk about Israel and Hamas and all the other things going on, and then they get into Russia and Ukraine and all these events, and we're going to touch upon Iran as well. So remember last week, I talked about how we're going to see now this big uptick in whether you call it rhetoric or propaganda or whether you think it's factual, whatever it is with Iran. Now, each person will have different views on it. My view is that I don't have the information, and I don't think a lot of other people do either, to know if what is being said and certain attacks are Iran or not. But as I talked about on Friday's Walk and Talk, this is not about the Iranian people themselves, who I've said I've met a lot of them. I have friends, they're very nice people. This is more about the government of Iran, which is a lot of this is going towards at the moment. And you'll see some of the other forecasts made as we go through it, how they're talking about a lot of stuff around Iran, which could be the next front, which would be pretty crazy. So let's carry on with this.
The number of domestic terrorism cases that they've been investigating at the FBI specifically, compared to the number of international terrorism organizations and those kinds of cases, they're about running even. So yeah, law enforcement is also very focused on preventing any kind of domestic.
Okay, so that's the first bit. Now we're going to get on to this, which is going crazy. It's all over social media what this lady has said. Now, firstly, let me just show you who she is, because most of the comments say, well, who is this lady, this Catherine Herridge? Who is she? Well, she actually was, well, still is, a senior investigative correspondent currently based in Washington, D.C. So she obviously is quite close to a lot of this sort of stuff. Here's some of the key things. Her spouse is Lieutenant Colonel Hayes. She was at Fox before, where she covered Hillary Clinton almost exclusively. Okay, first red flag for me there, including their campaign for Senate in 2000, 2004 Democratic presidential elections, Washington, D.C. area sniper attacks, the US-sponsored resolution calling for the lifting of sanctions against Iraq, and trials, I mean, all this sort of stuff, 9/11 attacks. She was in New York on September 11th, 2001. She then became a CBS News correspondent, And some of her criticisms are that she promotes Republican talking points and right-wing conspiracy theories. Oh, I love it when they say stuff like this. So here's just a little bit of context, and then here's what she had to say.
Terrorism.
We're in this incredibly dynamic threat environment right now, and the focus squarely is on lone actors or lone offenders, individuals who are inspired by events overseas, or they're inspired to act radicalized by domestic events, and very opportunistic. So it talks about car ramming attacks, it talks about weapons, it talks about knives, and a very short, what law enforcement calls flash to bang, that period in between wanting to act and then making the decision to act.
Okay, so there's the first thing that she mentioned. Now we'll get into the more intense stuff in a moment. We're going to jump forward. And by the way, this is called Face the Nation, full broadcast, December 24th, and it's on Face the Nation if you want to watch this. Now we're going to jump to 1725 here. Here we go. Let's jump right ahead.
In terms of violent crime, it is going down.
Catherine?
Sorry, did he just say violent crime is going down? Okay, we haven't even got time to address the absurdity of that right now. I must have missed that the first time around.
A little dark. I just feel a lot of concern that 2024 may be the year of a black swan event. This is a national security event with high.
Okay, so first point there, she said 2024, she feels is going to be a black swan event. What is a black swan event? COVID was a black swan event. The housing crash, the 2008 housing crash was a black swan event. The dot-com bubble bursting was a black swan event. I mean, they're big events, let's just say that, pretty crazy events. So that's her warning. She sees a black swan event in 2024. Let me continue it on a second here.
The impact that's very hard to predict. There are a number of concerns that I have that factor into that. Not only this sort of enduring heightened threat level that we're facing, the wars in Israel, also Ukraine, and we're so divided in this country in ways that we haven't seen before. And I think that just creates fertile ground for our adversaries like North Korea, China, and Iran. And that's what.
Okay, so there we go again that I mentioned before. So they're talking about Iran, and then I started looking at. I did a bit of work around this keyword of Iran with all the news articles and different news platforms, and it was insane the amount. I pulled up hundreds and hundreds of keywords saying Iran, and if you look at any story now where there's anything pretty much of a negative nature, it says Iran. So it's a little bit concerning as to what's going on with all of this. The next one they talked about then was Trump, and this was from 18 through to 19 and minutes in this video. And what they're saying, it's pretty wild if you start looking into all these debates. So what they're saying is that he's going to, no matter what happens, he's going to be the Republican nominee. And this is where a lot of these talk shows are really getting into this now. Some of them are in meltdown mode, that he's going to be the 2024 Republican nominee, and they're saying, well, he's got 100 indictments against him and he's a convicted felon and he can't run for president. It's like, well, I think he's still going to run. And this is the general consensus that Trump is going to run. And I personally think he's probably going to win, whether you like that or whether you don't like that. It's going to be an insane 2024. And then this is where all these other conversations come in. Well, what happens in that scenario? Because you're going to get some people that are going to go into complete meltdown. You saw what happened the first time around. Imagine what's going to happen the second time around. And what have you got? You've got all these movies coming out about 2024 at the moment. Civil War is the main one coming out in 2024. The ones I covered the other week. There's all these movies coming out, and they're all based on the latter part of 2024. Now, do I think there's going to be a civil war in 2024 in America? Not really. I think the odds of it are low, but it's possible. This is the thing. Anything's possible. We see these patterns through history. Why I always talk about my history and why I love reading my books, because you start to see these patterns and you start to see things that are emerging. And we're seeing a lot of things happening at the moment, which are quite concerning. But let's get on to the next point, which is North Korea, and that's at 2057. So let's go to that.
So we see North Korea testing new and improved weapons.
And perhaps that 7th nuclear test everyone's been waiting for.
Okay, I don't know if I think I didn't have the stream open on that bit, but basically what that guy was just saying was he thinks that Kim Jong-un and North Korea is going to be rewarded by Russia for all of this, the artillery shells that he'd given, and he thinks Russia's going to give some technology to help them with their nuclear facilities and all these other things. So they're highlighting that as a 2024 threat as well. So if you actually watch the video and you watch a lot of these other forecasts that are happening at the moment, I mean, firstly, that's a weird thing to put on Christmas Eve. I don't know about you guys, but on Christmas Eve, I wasn't making videos. I wasn't making video Christmas Day, even the day after what we call Boxing Day in the UK. I found out from my wife, Americans, you don't actually have Boxing Day, which is the day after Christmas. Well, it's one of my favorite days actually, but you know, I wasn't making videos on that day. For them to come out with this on Christmas Eve, I just thought, what are they thinking? Everyone's in a positive mood. It's all about happy and families and things like that. Hence why I'm waiting a couple of days after Christmas to get back into my negative stories, as it were. I don't want to do that around Christmas, but it's just strange that they started putting all this out there and warning people and really terrifying people that there's going to be this big event in 2024. But it's funny how none of them say what it's going to be. They just keep saying there's going to be a big event. It's going to happen in 2024. You better be prepared for it. Well, what exactly is it going to be? And drop in the comments below if you've got any theories. My theories center around either financial, or it's going to be cyber attack, or it's going to be something to do with the elections. Because what have you got? You've got the UK elections as well happening next year, 2024. I don't think there's going to be some sort of major event around that, because British people are not the way they used to be. They're not going to take to the streets and whatever. But you could see something in America for sure. I can definitely see that. I can see something with the cyber attack. We're seeing this already, and AI is getting more and more advanced. The advancements in AI now are mind-blowing to me, what I'm seeing. Even with the military applications and the robots, they've actually got factories now. I should do a video on this. They've got factories producing these humanoid robots, and the dogs and the one that's military, the massive one. It's huge. They've got all this stuff. They're all mounted with machine guns and all sorts of things now. It does remind me of Terminator a little bit. It's going that way. And that's probably what we're going to see, the next sort of wars and things. They'll be fought with just AI and drones. And I don't know, what if it gets a little bit out of hand, which it no doubt will. They always do get out of hand before they rein it back in. So we've got that. We've got cyber attacks, and we've got the election. We've got financial meltdown potentially, which I still think, I haven't changed that view in, 4 years now. I still think there's going to be some sort of an issue in the financial sector which makes them say, oh, we have to launch this CBDC, central bank digital currency. I think that's going to happen. Could it be a complete reset of the financial system? Maybe for some people. I don't think it'll be for everyone. The sort of elite people, they're never going to let their money be reset. They'll plan ahead of time and things like that. But there's a lot of concerns I've got, and please drop in the comments below, because I do like to, I know everybody else watching likes to read each other's comments, just so you can try and get a gauge of some of these things. But there's a lot more things going on. Let's just go over here. So yeah, we talked all through this, but she actually has a lot of stories. They're all quite negative stories actually, where she talks about what she thinks would happen through Christmas and New Year. And actually, these things did happen through Christmas. So a lot more attacks in the US. Yeah, she did all these stories on it. It's quite retaliatory attacks. I've never seen a time where all the threats, or so many of the threats, are all elevated at exactly the same time. So she talked about how US is going to have a big, big problem with attacks for supporting Israel. A lot of lone offenders, which she was saying that the FBI can't track because they're faith-based and all this other stuff. So she talked all about that. And then we have this, and it also talks about Iran a lot in these articles. This was another one. US launches retaliatory strikes after drone attack on Iraq military base, wounds 3 US service members. So this was another one. A drone attack by, and here it is again, Iran-affiliated terrorist group on a military base in Iraq early Monday morning, left 3 you can tell this is my first video back after Christmas, blah, blah, blah. 3 US service members wounded, the Pentagon said, and prompted Biden to order retaliatory strikes. 3 locations were basically bombed. That's what they're trying to say there. And this was by the US. The US said that no civilians were believed to have been killed or wounded. Iraqi officials said the US strikes killed 1 militant and injured 18 other people. In a statement, the Iraqi Prime Minister condemned both the militia attack and the US response, calling the US strikes a hostile act that infringed on Iraqi sovereignty. Yeah, but that's been going on for, but I'm saying that's been happening for a long time. The US has been in and out of Iraq for a long time. And what I find interesting is I thought that whoever would be Prime Minister of Iraq would be somewhat of a puppet for the US. So for him to come out and condemn the actions, I thought was quite interesting, actually. Again, you go through, I started highlighting where I saw Iran-backed fighters, Iran-backed militias, Iran-linked rebels. It's just Iran. Look how many times, and I didn't even highlight all of them. There's another one there, Iran. It's all about Iran, Yemen, etc. But Iran keeps denying that they have any involvement in all of this. And they said, we really didn't want this crisis to expand, referencing the Israeli-Hamas war. I'm not sure if I'd call it a war, but yeah, there's definitely a conflict going on. But the US has been intensifying the war in Gaza by throwing its support behind Israel. Yemen makes its own decisions and acts independently. So that is pretty much what we've got going on at the moment. It is just baffling to me how this keeps intensifying. I thought, I was only saying the other week, finally we've got a little bit of a breather, I think. It feels like we're having a little bit of a break, especially around the Christmas period. And then that happens on Christmas Eve. And now we're having all these new things happening between Christmas and the run up to New Year. I don't think 2024 is going to be a positive year the way things are looking. It looks like we might have a little bit of chaos going on, but I'm going to report a little bit more on that shortly. I'll wrap it up there. I'll see you either tomorrow or Friday for the Walk and Talk. All right, take care. God bless.